30 seconds. Okay, we are live. Yay. Hello, YouTube family, and I know Facebook as well. I just want to say, first of all, thank you. If you're joining us now live or you're watching later, we are so happy you're here. I'm Julie Riesler. I'm going to be chatting with some amazing, amazing, amazing women, human beings, intuitive coaches. I've got Kathy Batista, I've got Gina Casbaro, and Jen Conroy. And I just want to thank you three for coming today and being so open and willing to talk about the power of following your intuition. So excited to get started. All right. So for those who know me, welcome. I host the USU podcast. I'm also founder of the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Certification and Intuition School. And one thing I like to do to ground all of us is to pull a card. We're going to pull an intention card so that we can get a little bit more grounded in what the divine, what the universe has in store for us for our time together. So these are the USU intention cards. I am shuffling them. Let's see what we got. All right. Oh, well, this is always one of my favorite intentions. And I think you can't go wrong with this. I'll show it up so you can see it. It is love. It is love. So we will just take a moment to pause and focus on love. I am learning to love myself and others in the human family unconditionally, meaning without conditions or any reason other than I choose to be loving. So I love this. And I'm seeing some of you join. Hey, Miss, good to see you from Long Island. Welcome and love to you. And if you'd like to share where you're joining from, just put it in the chat. And if love is resonating with you, give us a little heart. We would love to know. The question that I think is really important here, and that, Gina and Jen and Kathy, that we can focus on is, how am I following what's loving in my life? How am I following this higher guidance, which is often what's most loving? How can I choose what's most loving for myself in my life, in my career? Right? And what would love have me do here? So these are like beautiful anchor questions for what we're going to be talking about. Hey, Leanna from New Hampshire. And if you'd like to share where you're coming from, would love that. And we are going to get started. So I am just really grateful. All three of these amazing coaches and women are mentor coaches in the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Program and are coaches in their own right. And I don't want to give away their story, but each of you really has courageously followed your intuition to do things in your life, in your career, that I don't know if you would have assumed you were doing. And so just want to share your stories. And who's feeling ready to just jump right in? Because I know all three of you have your own individual stories, but would love to start with sharing a little bit about you, how you followed your intuition to the career you're in now, and what does that look like?
Sure, I'll go first. Hey, everybody. So, I wanted to make a change in my own life and started doing lots of classes like we all see all over the internet, all of these growth and self-help classes. And I fell into an amazing one. And I was working with my coach one day, and I had had such personal growth. I had overcome some difficult adversities with my personal life. And so I was working with her and I said, oh my gosh, I could do this. I could help other women reach this point in their life where they're like, I want change, don't know how to do it, but I want it and I want to get it. Right. And so I had been coaching for a few years, and then my path crossed with Julie, and I knew her spin on coaching was sacred and intuitive. And I knew I needed that and wanted it in my coaching. But after taking the ILDC course, I realized how tapping into those messages, tapping into my own inner wisdom and strength helped me in my personal life way more than I had anticipated. And so I just feel so blessed to have gone through the coaching program, but now to be able to help other people start their journey with coaching or with using intuition in their own lives is just such a blessing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Kathy. We'll come back to you because I think how you're using it now is so powerful. Gina, would you like to share next? Thank you for sharing, Kathy.
Sure. It's so good to virtually be here with all of you. My name is Gina Casbaro, and I am an intuitive life designer coach as well as a feng shui expert. And when I was thinking about this of, okay, how did my intuition lead me to coaching? It's like dialed all the way back. And I have a podcast called Follow Your Spark. And that really sums up my journey as well, because I feel like it's been about following these intuitive breadcrumbs one step at a time. And when I was a kid, I didn't have the idea in my head of, oh, I want to be a coach. I knew I was interested in psychology. I knew I was interested in mindset. I knew I was interested in energy. And the journey that led me here was really following the breadcrumbs one step at a time and trusting that that next step was enough. So those breadcrumbs over the years led me to Lululemon, a company that many people know for their clothing. And what a lot of people don't know about Lululemon is that they are steeped in personal growth, leadership development, and coaching. And that was really my first introduction to it and training in it. And that was over 10 years ago. And it was through Lululemon that I also met Julie in a beautiful leadership and coaching container. And I just kept following the sparks. And because, similar to Kathy, because of the difference that coaching made in my life, what I was most passionate about was helping people grow themselves. So at Lululemon, I got to support people through goal setting and vision and strategy sessions and coaching. And that really led me to my own work, both as a coach and a feng shui consultant. And intuition is such a huge part of the work that I do now. And it's something that Julie and learning from Julie has really supported me to develop. And it is such a joy and pleasure to be able to be part of the intuitive life designer coach community and be a mentor coach to new coaches. So I'm so grateful to be here and so grateful for Julie in my life.
Oh my gosh, I love it, Gina. And I have questions for you and Kathy, but we're going to wait. I know, Jen, and thank you for sharing. And it's, I think, something for when anyone who's listening is you said something that really popped out, that those spiritual breadcrumbs, right? Like really following the and Kathy, you mentioned this in your own way as well. It's not a linear line. It's not a linear path. And to follow those, we'll talk more because I want to get into following your intuition, what that looks like. Jen would love to hear your share and your story.
It's so interesting because when Julie asked that question, the first thought that came into my mind was what Gina said. It was these little sparks of breadcrumb that I kept following. Mine started with an event that Julie was at. I didn't know Julie, but I had gone to that event. It was kind of a last minute booking. And that was the spark of following intuition, because that event led me to something else, which I kept following those little trails that got me to Julie's program. And it was at a time when I found Julie's program of life designer coaching. It was at a time where I was feeling very unfulfilled in my job. And coaching brought me this new opening, like just new understandings. It taught me how to get quiet so I can hear that intuitive, those messages that were already inside of me. She taught me how to listen to those messages and hear what they were saying. So I knew in my career that there was something missing. I just wasn't feeling like I was in the right place. And the more that I got quiet and listened to those messages inside that said, yes, this is the way to go, no, that's not the way to go, I kept finding what was going to help me feel fulfilled. And I am a financial coach. My background is that I was 20 years, I was a certified public accountant, which I still am, and still I take part of that work with me. But it's not all that I do. The financial coaching, I help people in their money stories to unravel the web that we kind of get into. And I found that love by continuing to be open to the messages that were there so that I could find what my message was where I needed to go. So I just, like Gina said, following that spark of breadcrumb, I just kept following the trail and trying to hear those messages. And it wasn't always, like Julie said, a narrow, straight path. Like it wasn't like, oh, everything just keeps opening. No, I mean, I tripped and I fell and I got back up, and it's all about just continuing to find what's right for you. And I think that's where it started for me, is just opening up to that messages. So.
Julie, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Now back. Can you guys hear me okay? That's important. I want to say, I appreciate each of you sharing a little bit about your story and to follow your intuition. Look, most of us are not taught how to do this. We're not taught how to do this. I wish we were, like in 6th grade, 5th grade, or elementary school curriculum. I wish we were taught how to trust our intuition, follow the breadcrumbs, and let it lead us. And I'm amazed, because I know for my own self, having left a corporate job, as a single mom, like none of that made sense to follow what really felt authentic and true and intuitively guided to do this work, coaching, podcasts, all of it. And each of you, it took major courage. And I just want to say, anyone listening, if you're here listening, or at any time, it's normal to have some fear. I'd like to talk about that for a minute, because having fear, like if you think you're not going to have fear, or when you're getting your intuitive guidance, the power of that fear is not going to be part of it. Like, I know for me, what I would say is I had some fear. However, the desire to step into my soul's calling and to follow what felt right and true for me was so powerful and strong that it helped me to navigate the fear. I'm curious for each of you, whoever would like to go first, like following your intuition, talk about the fear and how you have overcome that, or what practices you use to work with it so that it doesn't keep you stuck and trapped. Because I think many who are tuning in, and if you have questions, by the way, if you're watching, please share your questions with us, or for Gina, or for Jen, for Kathy, as we go. I wanted to say that. Please feel free to share questions. But talk about your fears and how you've overcome that.
Yeah, I can start. So I feel like you and I, Julia, have even talked about this on a different live, of that following your intuition, doesn't always feel quote unquote good, in the sense that, like you said, there might be fears, there might be things that feel scary, that feel uncomfortable. It's not always going to feel like there's no tension or no challenge there. And yet there's some kind of spark or light or fire, desire inside of you that is guiding you in a particular direction. So for me, when those fears have come up, it's about, for me, having the mind and the heart be able to work together. So it's allowing myself to bring to the surface, okay, what are the fears? Let me just get them all down. Let me write them all down on a piece of paper. And this is a practice that Julie shares in the coaching program as well, this brain dump and heart dump, of what's the brain dump of what are all the fears that are coming up? What are all the questions and the doubts that your mind is offering you? Get that all down on a piece of paper. And take a couple deep breaths, give yourself space to feel that and to honor that, and know that that's part of the human experience, to feel this whole range of emotions. And then tune into your heart and ask your heart or your intuition, what guidance do you have for me right now? What's coming up? And you can do an intuitive journaling practice. That's something that I turn to all the time, every single day, because it has been so transformative in my life, and see what your intuition has to share with you. And you can also address those fears. And part of coaching is about building empowering beliefs. It's about building evidence of why you are capable. So it's not about discounting and pretending we're never going to feel fear or limitation. It's about addressing that and saying, okay, my fear is telling me I can't do it. So let's ask my brain to do something supportive and come up with a list of why I can, and be able to build those new empowering beliefs. So it's not about cutting out the mind and saying the mind is not useful. The mind is useful. And it's about how are you marrying or connecting that mind and heart bridge. So that's what came up for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Gina. And that is something that I think I've talked about in my podcast, but we definitely do in the coach certification training, because we're taking such a intuitive, heart-centered approach. And I love what you said, like, this is real time. You use this. I know I use this, because our mind, our head, what that has to say is very different from our heart. And there's so many practices there. We won't get into all them, but that's a great one. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I'm also taking some notes. So if you're watching now or later, I'm putting those in the side comments so that you can kind of get those notes for yourself later. And curious about fear, Kathy or Jen, how do you manage fear? How do you deal with that as it relates to your intuition, as it relates to going for a career that maybe, I know you've left corporate jobs, done things that felt maybe scary.
I'll go next if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that's what kept me stuck was fear. I had known in my corporate life that I wasn't happy. I remember going to these big firm-wide meetings, and they were supposed to pump you up, and we are supposed to feel really good about what we were doing and the change we were making. And I would come out of those meetings going, this isn't the place for me. Like, this doesn't feel good. But fear kept me in that place. So I think what I needed to get to, and a question that I love, is like thinking about what do I need to believe in order to do the next step. Like, and for me, it was around safety. So what did I need to believe in order to feel safe in that next step, to follow that intuition? Because there were times where I knew the message, where I knew the direction I needed to go in, but fear held me back because I was so afraid of what could come out of that. So my thing was, what do I need to believe? And like, that's a great question to ask yourself. And once I got to that point, I found what would help me get out of that place of fear. So for me, safety, like what felt safe to be able to move forward into that direction. And I got to a place where I'm like, okay, this is what I need for safety. And then here's how I can move forward. And this is the belief I need to wrap my mindset around. So that's how I don't know if that explains it well, but that's what I needed to do, was to let go of that enormous weight of the fear and get to a place of like, okay, how can I change this into just changing that mindset and that going into a place of belief.
I love what you're saying, Jen. And I think that place of safety, that can look like different things. For some, it might be financially, it might be coming up with like a roadmap. That can mean different things. I think that's really important, because it's hard for us to make, as human beings, to make shifts if we don't feel safe. Yeah. And Kathy, I know you do a lot around that as well, around safety and mindset. And how do you handle fear? What's worked for you?
Yeah, so fear for me and for many people, it presents in so many different ways. It wears so many different masks. We may present unhappy, we may present sad, or some people overcompensate and they're very happy. And I'm perfect, I'm fine, I don't need to do anything, right? But this is where tapping into your intuition, into that little voice that lives inside of you. And I know you know where it lives inside of you, just intuitively. You'll hear this spark that says, there's something else, right? And that for me, when I first started on this journey, this time, I'll say in midlife, right? It was, I don't know what it is, but something's just not right. Just knowing that you wanted a change, right? And I think what happens, what keeps people in these different elements or different phases of fear is we've done the same thing for years and years and years. And it's really hard not only to change the mold for ourselves, but oftentimes we're like, how is that going to affect the rest of my life, right? How does starting a new job, how is that going to look for my husband or my kids or my wife or my mom and dad, right? There, so this is where we have to look at what's the life you want to create for yourself. And like even what we've been talking about, following the breadcrumbs, it doesn't mean that you have to roll out of bed one day and get, a certification, a website, and you're all set and ready to go. Do the next right thing for your path, and that will allow that, almost like that snake like shedding of the fear. It's exciting, actually. You're muted. I'm not.
I'm muted. Love the visual. So funny. I keep muting and unmuting and forgetting. It's all good. We're very real here, right? Just you go with it. I was saying I love the metaphor, and for those watching, some of you might already be coaches, maybe you've thought about it. It really is a healing path. And I know the way that I teach it, the way we use it, the way that you three use it as a mentor coach, as mentor coaches, we use metaphors a lot, but the foundation is tapping into your intuition. And I think you had said this, Gina, it's not avoiding any feelings. It's welcoming them. And it's allowing what wants to come forth. So that shedding of the skin, like you said, Kathy, when there's fear, we get curious. We get interested. We start to look at what's under it. We start to look at what are we actually really, really committed to? What is it that you really care about? And often intuition, which, Gina, you were giving the example of how to go from your head to your heart, which is a very different neighborhood. The heart is a very different neighborhood. And to really get that takes practice and takes intention and attention. And it is like shedding a skin. And often that fear is really, for many of us, it's a little pilot light that's going on. It's like, it reminds me of my card that's like, check your engine. It can be like, check your soul. Like, are you really in alignment with what you're doing? Now I'm on the car thing, so I'm going to keep going with it. Like, the tire's out of alignment, right? So often that fear can be, shoot, something's not working, but it doesn't mean we don't want to not pay attention to it and to honor it and to give it airtime. So fear is a big one. I appreciate each of you sharing about it, because I know, and if you're watching and you've ever felt, a little bit held back by fear, you're not alone. You're not alone, and you're definitely in the right company. And I think each of us, I know for me, one of the reasons to do this program and the show I have, some of you and I might have met through that, but this coaching program, adding the intuition foundation, it's like, it's everything, because you are going to live with yourself for the rest of your life. And if you don't trust your inner guidance and you're not following it, it's not bad or wrong. It's just, the only way to experience it is doing time, following it and not following it. You will start to notice it's a whole different world. And so that's a lot of what we teach and support, is learning how to trust yourself and how to follow this higher guidance, and then how to do that with other people. So I am curious, in terms of intuition and how it shows up for each of you, can you share a little bit about, like, what does that look like? I know it's been an evolving relationship, but what is it? What is your intuition? How does it show up? How do you connect to it? Just to share a little bit, because I know each of you have a different, way of doing that. Jen, go for it. I see you.
I'll go first. I just want to reinforce one thing Julie said about, you know, I heard this once, there's only one person you're guaranteed to be with for the rest of your life, and that's you. So I think that's what Julie's program taught me too, is that, like, I really have to be good with me, because that's where it all starts and ends. Like, you're only guaranteed to be with yourself for the rest of your life. But intuition, as far as how I tune into it, what it looks like um, for me, I have to get really quiet. Like, most of the time, and sometimes that's hard for me because there are places you can't get quiet. But for me, it's getting still, whether that's in writing or in meditation. A lot of times it is, for me, getting really quiet and hearing the messages within And sometimes I see those in words. Sometimes it's just a thought that pops into my mind. But for me, I have to get really quiet, and it's always been there. It's just for me, it's getting quiet and listening to them, and they'll come out. It's just tuning in to my heart more and less in my head, going to it is those little voices. For me, it's little voices that sometimes come in through thoughts or words I'll see, or visual I'll see visual things. But for me, it's definitely just getting really quiet and tuning in to what's already there, like giving myself that space to do it.
Beautifully said. Yeah. How about for you, Kathy or Gina?
I can go. I could talk about this forever. And similar to what Jen said, a big part of listening to intuition and hearing intuition for me is making the space to hear it. So sometimes a client said to me recently of like, oh, I didn't get any like divine epiphany, about something. And my question was there space created to receive that? Because I think if our lives are so busy and our days are so busy and we're just going and consumed with all of these things that we're filling our time with, filling our brains with, that it can be hard to see and notice the signs. So one practice that's really important to me is being able to make space for my intuition to come through. And that can look like a million different things. And we get into that in the intuitive part of the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Academy. And that could be meditation, that could be intuitive journaling, it could be going for solo hikes in nature, really anything that helps you tune in to yourself, those subtler senses, because oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, intuition, I feel like, can communicate in a really subtle way. And it also feels like a language that can be unique to every person. So in order to learn the language of your intuition, you need to spend time with yourself and explore and experiment with different practices and practice asking for intuitive guidance and see what you receive. And I have right next to me, I was just working on this today, these journals that I've used for myself and I use for my clients now about capturing evidence of intuition. So I do this year ahead intuitive oracle card spread for myself at the beginning of the year, for clients at the beginning of the year. And we pull an oracle card for each year or for each month. And then throughout the month, there's space in this journal, and you can use any journal. You can use a notes app in your phone to keep track of evidence, keep track of the signs that you're seeing and what happens when you follow those signs. And I've got 5+ years of these journals now, so I can look back and see, and it becomes so obvious. And now it's so ingrained in my practices that I see signs everywhere, every day, because it's just a part of my normal life and it's about making space. So that's what comes up for me.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. And this is something we'll talk a little bit shortly about, really how, and this is something definitely that we work on and teach, but how to really build that relationship of trust. And like you're saying, how you do that now, it's second nature. So awesome. Thank you for sharing, Gina. Kathy, how about for you?
Yeah, so I've lost track of the question. It was how I use intuition in my daily life, I think, right?
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
it.
So, I use it from the moment I wake up till when I go to bed, and I would probably venture to say that my dream state uses intuition as well. And it's my belief that this happens for everybody. And so I definitely, like Gina and Jen were saying, I create space and I have my rituals and my routines that I do daily, weekly, monthly, to maintain this relationship. Your intuition is a two-way street, right? And it's almost like they're just waiting there, like they're on hold. We just have to pick up the phone. But how I develop it and work with it is I find the easiest way for me, and I teach my clients this, is basics, right? It's a knowing. It's this intuitive inner guidance of knowing, right? And so I'll often say, what made you choose that shirt, right? If you open the fridge and there's two different yogurts, it's that knowing which one you want, right? It is always there with us, right? If you go to a store, what are you choosing, right? What are you being called for, right? So when we stop and pay attention to all these little ways in our lives that we actually use intuition, you're using it, right? To be guided to tune in today is following your intuition of doing something you want to do in hopes of achieving an outcome, right? And so it's right there waiting. It's almost like messages in a bottle waiting for us, and pick up the phone, right?
Okay, I love that. The messages in the bottle, it's there waiting for us. These are so, so good. Something for anyone tuning in and if it usually and what I'm hearing from each of you, what I've experienced is that there's something often that we're thinking about that it's like, God, I would love to do that, but I really feel called, like my energy. We talk a lot about muscle testing and using your body wisdom. And a great tool and tip that I can share right here is, the using your body, leaning in. If you're watching and you're leaning in, like that's good to notice. If you're leaning back, that's good to notice. Like do this with foods, do this with decisions. So really noticing and honoring your body. And that's like for many of us, again, we weren't taught that. It's something that we teach because you're learning how to know the relationship and the messages, like you said, Kathy, message in the bottle, like the messages your body is giving you, the messages that your inner guidance is giving you. Um, we will talk a little bit about this program because it's if you're tuning in and you're interested, we've had a lot of coaches go through it. We've had a lot of healers, all kinds of professionals, lawyers, doctors, psychologists. I really believe the world of coaching is mushrooming and ballooning so much because it works. I think for each of you to just share, you each took a step, a courageous step of whether it was leaving your day job, your corporate job, the work you were doing to really step into starting your own practice and helping other people and helping them to develop their intuition. Then, of course, also working with me. I'm so grateful. All three of these incredible women are mentor coaches in the coaching program. We're going to be going into our 12th cohort. I did put information, so if you're interested. But I am curious for people to like get that these are businesses that are now supporting you. Like your intuition has led you to being of service and helping others. And I know this for me too. Like I didn't know 10 years ago, I was in a corporate job. I didn't know. I just knew that there was a desire to do more, to add more light on the planet, to make an impact. And I'd worked with a coach that changed my life, like literally changed my perspective, which for those who are into spiritual texts like A Course in Miracles, miracles are a change in perspective. And so I think of this work as miracle work. I really do. I think of what we're doing as miracle work. And so creating these miracles, I believe, are very tied to our intuition because our higher guidance is not going to have us move into something that's not going to be of the highest good for others. So maybe to just share a story or two, somebody you've worked with that, how this work has like really made an impact in somebody else's life, or it could be around your intuition as well. But I think just to give a sense and a taste that this really can open the door, not just for a prosperous life for you, but also for other people. So I know it's off the cuff. Does anyone have like a story or just something you'd like to share about how this work has really been transformational?
I can share. So a big part of the type of clients I attract and serve are supporting women in particular to break free from societal expectations, external pressure, and really live their most authentic, inspired life. And that often comes with a lot of like deprogramming from hustle culture and letting go of what they think they should be doing. And a client is coming to mind now, even around diet and food, of letting go again of what they think that that diet and meal plan should look like, and to be able to learn how to tune into their body and their intuition to let that guide them. And whether it's diet or career or relationships, to know that you don't have to live your life according to external pressures or seeking external validation. It's really being able to internally validate yourself, because when you're able to do that, you're not at the mercy of these external factors. You're not seeking joy or satisfaction from how much money you're making, or what your job title is, or what relationship you are or aren't in. So across the board, really with all of my clients, I would say one of the biggest impacts is feeling that sense of freedom and being able to create happiness, love, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction internally without needing to please other people or live up to anyone else's expectations. And like we've been talking about with intuition, it's all about having that relationship with you and honoring your true desires. So letting go of who you think you should be and allowing yourself to actually be who you are.
Oh, so beautifully said. This is the whole point, whether I know I call it your USU, your higher self, your authenticity. And I think also what I hear in there too, Gina, is self-love, learning how to love yourself deeper. It's beautiful. Yeah. Kathy or Jen, there's some sort of inspirational story, something you can share that's been an example.
Sure, I'll go. So I work with a lot of women in this like midlife phase, right? That we're in, right? Whether it's 40, 50, 60s, sometimes 70s. We follow this where we want to break free of what we've always done. And we know there's something more for us. We're kind of like itching to get out of this cocoon we've been in and ready to just blossom. And I notice, and this is why I responded so well to coaching, is because we create a sacred space. We intuitively create a sacred space for our clients. So if you become a coach and you're working with people, you're going to create a space for somebody else to experience growth, right? To almost be on someone's journey with them and allow them to blossom in whatever way they want. It's really such a blessing. I feel so honored to do it. And that when we take the time to be with another person and leave space for them to find their intuition, to find who they want to be, to live authentically. So Julie mentioned this the other day, is that it doesn't, if I light someone's candle with my flame, it doesn't diminish mine. And then they take and light somebody else's, right? So the ripple effect of coaching is endless, right? We affect one life and then it just keeps going on, right? And I often tell people when I talk about coaching, it's intuitively your client has what they need. They have it, right? They have this map. So as a coach, we have a flashlight that says, I see you have this awesome map and you're just not sure which way to go. Let me shine this flashlight for you and we'll get you there, right? So it's such an empowering thing. It's almost like empowering to empower people, right? It's a beautiful job and I love it.
Just have to say before Jen, you speak, love what you said, Kathy, and I want to say whether you're listening now and you're like, I'm interested in coaching or I already coach people or not, I want you to hear that sacred knowing is within each of us, right? Coaches are fantastic because if you're trained properly, like you were both, Gina and Kathy, saying, you're trained how to help the other person uncover their own greatness, their own inner map, their own inner, GPS, whatever you want to call it. And that in itself it's a skill to do that. And we all have that. So knowing if nothing more you get, each of us has what we need inside. We have that wisdom. Our intuition is the guide, and it can be super, super powerful and life-changing when you have someone who can be your doula, your guide, your mentor, the person that helps you to get from A to Z. Because I don't know, I don't like to do life alone. I think it's much harder. So I love that. Really helpful. Jen, I'm going to give you the floor to share for a few moments.
Yeah, I was going to say, and speaking of intuition, it's also really important to look at the consequences of not following that intuition. So that's what I've experienced with some clients, is like when they get to a point where they're looking at the consequences of not making changes sooner, right? It's never too late. It might be late, but it's never too late to make changes. So looking at what has been the consequence of not following your intuition. And that's something that's come up for clients. And because I work as a financial coach, looking at people's money stories, and they often come to me in this place of like, I haven't done it right. And it's more of looking at, okay, but you're making the change now. And like, we can look at like, what has got you here, right? What has got you here? But then where are we going? Like keeping it forward moving, which is what coaching is always looking to the future, but also looking at like, okay, what got me to this place, and let's move forward. Like change can be made because we can look at what were the consequences of not following my gut on this. So that's what comes up for me.
Beautiful. What you just said, Jen, reminds me a little bit, what Gina, you were talking about, and what we talk about a lot with both coaching and an intuition school is tracking, is starting to build that faith and trust with yourself. And so looking to see, when did you follow it? What happened? This is actually what made one of the biggest changes in my life. I started to look at, oh my gosh, when I follow my intuition, life is like, oh my gosh, there's no different. I mean, there's a huge difference. You can't even compare. It's not apples to oranges or apples to apples at all. It's literally a 180, right? So you start to notice when I didn't follow it, not judging yourself what happened. When I did follow it, what happened and what's the difference and how does that feel and what can I learn from that? That's a big piece of what I love with what we do as coaches is it's not about judging yourself. It's about learning. It's about growing. It's about evolving. It's about becoming. It's about being your highest self. And that is constantly something that, as human beings, anyone that's here, like attracts like. You're here because you want to be a bigger light. You want to evolve. You want to grow. I don't know of any better way than coaching because I truly believe it's a healing path. Some of the things that you've all said, I just want to share, that learning how to create that sacred space in yourself and with others, as well as remembering. So following your intuition, whether you are a coach or choose to be one, or it's another area that you feel called to do, there is going to be fear. There's going to be fear. So we want to welcome it. We want to know and acknowledge that it's to be expected. That there's a ripple effect. I think you said that, Kathy, there's a ripple effect when you follow your intuition. There's a quote I have right at the bottom of my door that says, the universe pays us back for taking risks on its behalf. It's by Shakti Gawain, and I hope I'm saying that right. And I read that every day because it reminds me there is an exchange. When you are choosing to trust your intuition, it's like you're listening to the greater divine voice, your higher self, this guidance that is here, not just for your highest good, but all of our highest good. So for some of you, it might be that you're interested to learn more about this work, this healing path of coaching, specifically intuitive coaching. And it might be that you want to take the work you're doing farther, the personal spiritual evolution work that you're doing further to evolve your intuition. Definitely support that. The other thing I kept hearing is we all have what we need. And we've got to remember that the answers, it's fine to seek, to support and wisdom, but the truth is the real wisdom is within each of us. So before we close, and I'll share at the very end about this program because we're going to begin our 12th cohort in January, and we have a very special, if you're interested, you definitely want to look into it now because we have a special bonus right now of $1,000 off. And also it's a very one of a kind premier program. But before we talk about that, I would just love, is there anything I didn't ask you or anything that's coming through you intuitively that's a message for our community around how, the power of following your intuition, or anything that maybe wasn't said?
What's coming into my mind, and I'm going to follow my intuition and say it, is that we have at least one person in every cohort who takes ILDC, and not to become a coach, but to enhance their life, enhance their relationships, enhance their communication skills, develop that intuition with themselves. It is an all-encompassing program, right? So it's almost like if you have that nudge to be a coach, but you're just not sure, there's so much in this program that I think personally, when I went through it a few years ago now, it helped me with my life, not only my coaching career, but with my life. It's a powerful program.
Thank you for sharing, Kathy. Jen or Gina, anything that I didn't ask or anything you just would like to share that's there for you?
Yeah, the biggest thing that keeps coming through for me is that you don't always or ever get to know like the final destination. And I feel like sometimes with intuition, what can feel scary is if it's like, well, I don't know where this is going. I don't know exactly why I'm called to this program or to go to this event or whatever it is, yet there's something that's calling me. So I think that's what oftentimes takes courage, is to be able to say yes to that next spark without knowing what's going to happen next. So I don't feel like you need to have the perfect plan or like, okay, if I do this certification, then I'm going to have a business, and then my next 10 years and 20 years and 50 years is going to look exactly like this. You don't need to know any of that right now. All you need to know is, okay, I'm feeling this spark, this intuitive nudge inside me that feels like such a strong yes, that's pulling me towards something. And I have, goosebumps as I'm talking about this, because I can think about so many times in my life where I had no idea where it was going to lead. But once you say yes, then the next step comes. Then the next step comes. And you have to take the first step or say yes to the first breadcrumb in order to get the next one. So to trust the breadcrumbs one at a time, and don't feel like you have to have everything mapped out.
And I have to say, just intuitively looking at the gorgeous drawing behind you, the painting. So everyone who's watching, or now or later, notice it's not linear, right? It's not linear. It's got loops. It can feel like you're going backwards and to the side, and we don't know. And it's just what you said. Our intuition is not a linear process. So I had to point that out. I'm like, oh, she's literally got that behind her. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Gina. Jen, anything, we call them heart flares on the podcast and in the coaching academy. Any heart flares from you?
Just really quick, kind of summing up, it's kind of what Kathy and Gina said, but following those little bits of sparks can bring you to things you didn't even imagine. In my journey, not only did I leave a corporate job that I was not fulfilled in, but it also created a lot of healing in my life. And I would have never known that saying yes to Julie's program. Like Gina said, it's just that first step. It's just following that yes and knowing what that no is so that you can get to the yes, and then seeing what comes. And so many things. For me, it was healing, finding a new job, finding a career that was really in alignment. So just to recap, just follow those nudges and see where it takes you.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you all. And I just want to thank our community. Hello, Juliet. And I see Cheryl is joining us, who has also gone through the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Academy and Intuition School. And I will share, if you're like on the fence, or even if you have just wondered about helping other people, like if you feel like, I always say, if you feel like you're wearing a big old sign or like name tag that says, come talk to me, and people feel comfortable to talk to you, and you find yourself often getting into like deep end of the pool conversations with others without really meaning to, including like at the post office or at the, airport, then this is definitely something to consider. Like Kathy said, we have people that go through this program that use this work as coaches and in practices like you, Jen, and Gina and Kathy, and some who don't. And it's changed their relationship with their children, their spouse, their family, and with themselves. And there's a lot of ways to integrate this work. And I have to say, somebody I've devoted my life and studies to this, did a master's degree in it. I teach at Georgetown University, and now this will be the 12th cohort. I really believe this work, it is a healing path, and it's all based on following your intuition. It really is. Because when you trust your intuition, first for yourself, you're never going to be led astray, even when it feels astray, kind of pulling up what you've all said about breadcrumbs. And, the second piece is you learn how to help other people by tuning into them at a deeper level. Most of us, it's hard. We have blind spots. We just do. And so having a coach who knows how to see your blind spots, there's nothing else like that. That's where the real growth happens, because we can't, right? If you don't see the growth, the blind spot, then you're going to keep doing what you've always done, which, is the definition of insanity, which is why I have felt insane before when I've not worked with somebody who can see that. But I want to say, some of the best pieces of, I think, what we've been talking about today, no matter what you do next, is I hope what you've gotten from this conversation is the real knowing and the support and the empowerment to follow your inner guidance, that voice, to follow spirit, to follow your higher self, whatever you call it. We all have this. We're born with it. I always say batteries are included for every human being. And, if you want more peace in the world, that peace comes from following what's peaceful for yourself. And I just don't know any better way of finding more peace and happiness and prosperity and abundance than having somebody who is by your side, who's got your back, who can hear what you're saying and not saying, who can use their intuition to help you connect with your intuition. I don't know any other way of doing that more than coaching. It's also, as I said earlier, I do think it's a healing path for the coach, for you, if you do become a coach or if you are a coach, and for your client. And it's a transformative experience all together. So I'm going to share some information. It's in the chat. I'm also going to just share it here. If you're interested, the next cohort for the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Academy, the 12th cohort, will be January, the end of January. Jen and Gina and Kathy are all mentor coaches. They've been certified and trained. We've had many, many students from all over the world go through this program. It's a really powerful, life-changing program. It is not a coach in the box kind of thing. It's 4 months. We're all together. We meet twice a week live. You have lifetime access to this program. You also are going to have intuition school. And Cheryl mentioned that. Cheryl's in intuition school as well. All the coaches that go through this will have access to intuition school that you get lifetime access to. And there's a ton of other bonuses, but I'm not going to go into all that now. But in December, if you sign up and you decide this is for you, notice your body. If you're leaning in, you can always reach out if you'd like to chat with me, or feel free to reach out to Jen or Gina or Kathy. I'll put all of their information, and they'll be happy to, any of us will be happy to talk to you. But truly, this is a game changer, because you're going to be changing your relationship with your intuition, with yourself, and trusting yourself and building your confidence and your mastery so that you can use it in your own life. I think of it like your intuition becomes your best chat GPT. Like, instead of putting in the question, it's your own inner AI tool. Like, it's going to tell you where to go, what to do, but what is actually aligned for you. So we're starting, I put the information, we're starting in January. If you sign up in December, there is $1,000 off. There's also a special bonus. If you're watching now and you use the code FAST ACTION, you'll get another $97 off. That's until 12/12. And either way, and if not, and this is not your thing, that's cool too. I'm really hoping you got some nuggets here about how to trust your intuition, the power of it. All 4 of us are in these roles and didn't necessarily know we were going to be here, but followed those breadcrumbs, followed the messages in the bottles, followed the like little voice that said, do it different, try this, go here, pay attention. So for you listening, I hope that this is inspiring you to pay attention, to set your intention, and to really to start to trust this inner guidance that is you. And I'm seeing Jacob has a comment. I'm highly intuitive. I trust the guidance that comes from within. I can tell true light from false light. My strength and resources are multidimensional. Beautiful. That is awesome. Well, then, my friend, keep doing what you're doing and use your intuition. And hopefully, you are going to be a light to others who can be inspired by what you're doing. All right. I'm going to pull one more card because this is what we do here. And this will be just to end today's time together, the power of our intuition. Just going to shuffle these intention cards and see how we're going to end. So beautiful. This is interesting. I've been doing a lot of this work. I've talked a lot about A Course in Miracles. I'm a big fan. And what is the card that I chose is forgiveness. So forgiveness, I can't change the past. I can only change my present. I know that by forgiving others and myself for any past hurts, I allow myself to be free and at ease. So what I'm getting intuitively is that, if you haven't followed your intuition, if perhaps maybe you did something that you thought was really this commonsensical thing, but it didn't feel right to you. And maybe there's regrets. Maybe you feel like, oh, shoot, I should have not made that turn or made that decision or married that person or whatever it was, to really call in forgiveness, to really call in the letting it go, the getting that you're human, that these are all learning opportunities, and that we have a chance to use forgiveness with ourselves and others at all times. It's a beautiful spiritual practice. I think it's so funny. I pulled that. This has been the card I've been pulling almost every day for myself. So I believe it's for all of us to pardon, and remember we're human, and to let go of things that we can't change. The serenity prayer, right? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change, courage to change the things I can't, and wisdom to know the difference. So to give yourself grace and to give yourself that space, that if it's something that you wish you had done different, to let it go, to forgive yourself. And thank you all for being here. Jen, Gina, Kathy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your courage, your heart. It takes massive, massive courage to follow your intuition. And I'm so grateful that we get to be together in the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Academy, that we're going to get to be in the cohort number 12. And we welcome anybody here who feels aligned or like a leaning into it. And I just want to thank the three of you for being here and being so authentic and courageous, living out your truth and your soul's purpose. And it's an honor to be your friend and to be on this journey with you and with each of you here. So much love.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. It was fun.
All right, everybody, we are going to end here. I'm just going to ask you before we leave, if you would like to put in the chat, what is your biggest takeaway? What's something that is going to move the needle for you around following your intuition? What are you taking from this conversation today with these amazing, amazing women and leaders? So if you'd like to put in the chat, or your favorite emoji, any of those work. What's your key insight, your biggest takeaway? Would love to see. Feel free to share it. And of course, you can always share it later. This will be up on YouTube. It's on Facebook. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Go to julieriesler.com or julieriesler.com/certification. That is where all this information is. And as always, from all of us, may you continue to trust yourself and to follow your intuition. You have the answers. You have all those breadcrumbs that are showing themselves to you. May you have the courage to follow. Lots of love, everybody.